selección. Ta voix, c'est notre choix.
The voice of Florida.
La voz de la Florida.
Your voice is our choice with Dr. Karen Green.
Good morning and welcome to
The Voice
of Florida. Thank you so much for our viewing audience and welcome back to this week's segment and program of The Voice of Florida. Today we all are truly blessed to have with us one of the United States Congress most diligent, dedicated, and hardworking representatives out of the state of Florida, representing the 9th District in Florida, covering almost a fraction of 3 counties, if I'm not mistaken, Lake, Osceola, and Orange County. Congressman Soto has long been an advocate, a friend, a dear friend, one who has not only led in leadership in his own capacity, but just really a leader within the Caribbean community, as well as for our state and country's values. Congressman Darren Soto, I'm so honored to have you as a guest. Welcome. How are you?
Karen, thank you so much for having me. Honored to represent Orange, Osceola, and you got it very close. I still have a small part of Polk County, and I only mention that because we have a huge Caribbean community there as well. And things are good, obviously very busy on the campaign trail. And we had a couple weeks in Washington where we passed the continuing resolution to keep the government going until December, when we vote on the budget in all likelihood. The state had a huge hit by Hurricane Helene, and we've worked on a lot of that disaster relief effort. We're pleased that the Biden-Harris administration just approved a disaster declaration for Florida that'll help out. We know it hit the Caribbean a little bit too. Cuba was hit, as well as areas by Cancun. This was one of those unique hurricanes where it went up from the Yucatan Peninsula rather than the traditional one we see that hits all the islands on the way to Florida. So I suppose that at least is a blessing. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to a great discussion.
Congressman Soto, this is, hurricanes. You have been a strong supporter of survival in the hurricane region. The Caribbean is so prone to tropical disasters. The path from Africa to the U.S. is always, during these times, hurricane has always attacked us or ravished us. I also want to commend you on having received the Environmental Caucus Award, rightfully so. Congressman Darren Soto has not only been leading in hurricane relief for the past 5 natural horrible hurricanes, category 5s, during the times for the U.S. Virgin Islands, Bahamas, Haiti. He's always on the front line making sure that our community is in fact supported and securing the resources. Himself and other members within the delegation. However, Congressman Soto, this morning we wanted to not only thank you, but to present you to our global audience for the work you've done, for the work you continue to do. And as you just mentioned, I think Florida, we've lost almost 9, I think it was 9 the folks who perished due to this hurricane. And in the country today, going to the southern states, North Carolina, South, Georgia, etc., Tennessee, we are seeing the death toll almost at 89 this morning, I think the count was. We will continue to see these challenges because of global warming. Congressman Soto, this morning, I know, as you mentioned, that was because of redistricting, your district saw some changes. But I can also say to you, sir, that I don't think there's anyone, and I can say this without prejudice, that you have been representing every demographic group within your district. How are things looking today within District 9 based on what we've experienced with what we refer to as a purging of the electorate? How are things looking in your district?
Well, people are excited about the Biden-Harris administration. Of course, Kamala Harris's candidacy. We've seen 45,000 Floridians sign up to volunteer for her campaign. Locally, we're seeing a lot of big victories thanks to the leadership of both President Biden and Vice President Harris. We passed the American Rescue Plan to get us out of the pandemic. We passed the infrastructure law, which is now allowing us to expand I-4. A lot of our fellow Caribbean peoples are in traffic on I-4, so we got $3.5 billion to expand that. Another $300 million to expand the airport, especially Terminal C. You know how many of us are traveling back home to our family's native islands. We also have an expansion of Poinciana Parkway. A lot of Caribbean peoples live in Poinciana. I live in Kissimmee, just up the road. We know we need to improve that as well. And then, of course, we're going to the next big thing, which is a Sunrail Brightline expansion, which would connect Sunrail to the airport, to the theme parks, get weekend service, and continue that Brightline train that goes from Miami to Orlando out to Tampa. We also saw with the CHIPS Act a boost in manufacturing, including in Neo City, where we're making aerospace microchips. The Inflation Reduction Act, the biggest bill to combat climate change in our history, is all about helping folks afford electric vehicles, solar panels, to make their homes more energy efficient, to help industry reduce carbon emissions. And of course, we got a big jobs project in Poinciana from the IRA that is helping with clean energy manufacturing. The other part of it was to lower healthcare costs, capping insulin at $35 a month, making the Affordable Care Act plans more affordable. Did you know, Karen, we have the second most enrollees in Obamacare in the nation in our district, and the top 5 are in Florida. And of course, we're capping out-of-pocket expenses for seniors with Medicare at $3,500 this year, $2,000 next year. And if that's not enough, we also were able to help our veterans. You know how many folks from the Caribbean community we serve in the military, so many Caribbean people. So we passed the PACT Act for those veterans coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq. A lot of folks I've talked to in the Caribbean community who are benefiting from those. So a lot going on, but we have a lot of challenges too. Seeing all these major infrastructure projects through, continuing to lower our emissions, and of course, housing, one of the biggest things going forward. So that's one of the, Kamala has a plan. Of course she does, because she's a brilliant Jamaican American.
Absolutely.
I feel like
yes,
we gotta just exclamation point that. But her plan would incentivize new starter homes for first-time home buyers, incentivize affordable housing, get investing these big hedge funds out of the market, and stop the collusion that's raising rent, among other things. So housing is one of our biggest things, and obviously that would be great for Central Florida. We're a popular area to live, and so housing's become a challenge for a lot of folks.
Congressman, your district in District 9 happens to be one of the most diverse, as you rightfully said. The veteran population, and also after Hurricane Maria, we had a lot of Puerto Ricans who relocated to your district. I must say you're correct that not only do we have a housing crisis, but that has been one of the areas of concern within the state of Florida. I also wanted to mention that one of the things that Congressman Soto does not take much credit for is that during the COVID crisis, let me just share with our listening audience today, Congressman Soto was one of those who, during my support, and others who led, he and Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, delegate from U.S. Virgin Islands, and others were at the head of the line fighting for us to get those vaccines to our Caribbean region. And Congressman Soto, today I want to thank you on behalf of our community for helping us to save lives, for helping us to get past that district, that crisis, to be alive and be able to be talking to you without masks today. One thing before I move over is that your district also has another very large area of employment because of agriculture. And I know at some point you also helped to steer that priority and initiative in our country. How is agriculture now within your district, District 9, and the folks who are now trying to work, who are trying TPS recipients? How is your district?
So first, thanks for working with me to help get vaccines to Jamaica and other areas. I know Kamala would be proud of us for our work. It was also a big priority for my ledge director at the time, Nicole McLaren of Jamaican Descent, who grew up in West Orange County, although she just got appointed as HUD Deputy Assistant Secretary of Legislative Affairs. So we have Jamaicans in the White House and at HUD.
Awesome.
So I'm honored to be on the Agriculture Committee. We are working on the Farm Bill to both help our ranchers, growers. We do a lot of cattle around here. We make America's hamburger meat. If you like a cheeseburger in paradise, we got you covered. Also blueberries, strawberries, citrus, of course, and a lot of different fruits and vegetables. We also have 15% of families on the SNAP program. So absolutely critical that we fully fund that program. A hand up for so many families that are trying to make it by, especially as we see housing become such a challenge that this ends up being a very important thing. So we have the Farm Bill out of committee, but we're still working with the Senate. I'm hopeful that we'll get this in for a landing before the end of the year. While most people are familiar with North Osceola, South Orange, South Downtown, areas like that I represent, where most of the people are, the district goes way down south to Yeehaw Junction.
Yes, it does.
And my home county of Osceola is a pretty big area, 1,500 square miles. Anybody from South Florida knows about Yeehaw Junction because that's like the first stop getting to Central Florida. And a lot of that is agricultural land. So we're going to continue to work to help make sure we feed America. One other thing really important we continue to work on is economic development and security in the Caribbean. Every year I've worked with our amazing member from Virgin Islands, Stacey Plaskett, an absolute rock star, on the Security and Economic Development Initiative for the Caribbean. We get hundreds of millions of dollars to help with keeping the Caribbean safe. We have some drug trafficking issues that we continue to have to work on to make sure that we keep people safe. We have economic development, especially in agriculture and cultural products. Think of music, think of furniture, clothing, beauty products, all these things that are artisan goods that remind us of home are big business in the Caribbean, and they sell their goods here. So a lot of this is going to be continuing to be our focus as we lift up the Caribbean communities through economic development and security.
Congressman Soto, your district and your representation also has one of the largest, most diverse immigrant districts. And you mentioned it before, these are not just folks coming from Central and South America, but from the Caribbean region. Your district, based on my experience, the linguistics, Portuguese, English, Spanish, Creole, French, you have a very large district, and the communication and integration of your district. The immigration situation this week, or Vice President, the most experienced, I believe, ever nominated, went to the border. And we know that her experience was sincere. How are you today? And also let me congratulate you on Hispanic Month, the celebration as well. I know because we see you as one of us, we forget that the linguistics of the Caribbean also has Spanish. Thank you again. What is your take right now on the current immigration crisis we're facing and or understanding of our nominee?
So first, Congress has to pass the comprehensive immigration reform. We've seen the Republicans continue to block it, unfortunately. But in the meantime, we need to make sure our southern border is secure, and we do everything we can in executive power to help with humanitarian efforts. So I led the charge to pass Venezuela TPS twice out of the House. We convinced President Biden to approve it and then extend it to folks who arrived as of October last year. We know that country has collapsed. We also created the parole program that includes Haitians, Cubans, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans, all countries that have faced serious issues. So over 30,000 people a month can come in through that program from as long as they have a sponsor here in the United States. And of course, through asylum, we see others. So we still have legally about 80,000 plus folks coming in a month through the southern border, through asylum and the parole program. We need to continue to work on these programs, but it's uniting a lot of people, especially the Haitian community. They've been under so much attack lately by these lies that have been perpetrated by the former president and his running mate. And so it really is important as we see struggles in Haiti that we help some of these folks. We saw a high-profile visit by the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, just recently to the Transitional Council as they're working on improving security and getting elections prepared for Haiti. So that's going to be a big help to that area. And of course, we know Cuba, still a communist country, many Afro-Latinos there who are suffering, among others. And so we want to help as best we can with all these different places in the Caribbean, along with some of our friends from Central and South America as well.
Congressman Soto, you've touched on a discussion that we're going to continue to have this morning. Thank you again for this moment. But what we're going to do beyond this point, Congressman Soto, is we're going to be inviting representatives of these people you just spoke of within the Caribbean region. We're going to go to a break, and on the other end of this, on the back end of this break, we're going to be bringing in our other special guests today. This is going to be a very exciting program. Congressman Soto, let us thank you for this moment, and then we'll welcome you back to the second segment. Welcome to, again, we've just completed our first section of The Voice of Florida. We're moving into our break. Thank you again for tuning where your voice is our choice.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Good morning again. Welcome back to the second segment of Your Voice. Welcome to Your Voice is Our Choice here on this program. I am honored this morning, as I mentioned before, we were going to be having an engaging conversation focusing on the Caribbean diaspora, Caribbean American citizens in this country, and the priorities and the value of all of us. We are so honored this morning to have on this, what you can see right now on the screen, we'll have representation from the Caribbean Democratic Caucus President, or Haitian American Caucus President here as well, Heda Pierre. We'll also have from the U.S. Virgin Islands, one who's been representing the Caribbean region and our Caribbean Americans in the U.S. territories, Carol Burke, my dear sister friend, who currently serves as the vice chair of the U.S. Virgin Islands Demographic Party, but also as a superdelegate and delegate for the Caribbean for our new or soon to be next president, Kamala Harris. Also on the call this morning, we have my sister Gwyneth Gittins-Roberts, who happens to be the leader, the producer, and the director of the Caribbean Carnival and the Caribbean Passport, one who has also been behind the scenes and in front of the scenes steering our voices and making sure that we are heard in this community. Congressman Soto will join us again in a minute, but right now I wanted to just introduce you all before to our audience individually. Okay, I think he just left. We could reach back out to him. He promised to stay with us for a few minutes. But let us continue to talk for a minute. Let me ask you individually to introduce yourselves. Starting with Carol. How are you, sister? How is the U.S. Virgin Islands today?
Carol's mic is muted.
Carol, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I was saying thank you so much, my dear sister. And as you were introducing everyone, I'm saying, wow, I'm so honored to be a part of this illustrious platform of progressive women. And I look forward to an engaging conversation with all of them. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Carol. Welcome again. And of course, we all know that our sister Gwyneth, you're next. Just introduce yourself for a second, please, for a minute. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Name's Gwyneth Roberts, president of the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce. We really organized just about everything that we could to push the Caribbean American community. Anything that comes our way, that's the initiative. And then, of course, however, it branches into the wider markets. And so we're just excited because Florida's Caribbean community has so much potential, and we're here to share it through our newspaper and our other media.
Thank you, Gwyneth, as always. Now, many of you have come to know or returning guest or president of the Haitian American Caucus, Heather Pierre. Heather, welcome back. You know, we all see you for who you are, the work you've been doing, and especially what's been happening across this nation based on what Congressman Soto just reminded us. I know you're a teacher, you're in your classroom, stepping out of your room to join us this morning. Can you please just tell us how things are going within the Haitian Caucus?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Pierre Joseph. I'm the president of the Democratic Haitian Caucus for the state of Florida. We find ourselves in a unique position, right? We're Caribbean and we're also part of Latin America. For the caucus, we're organizing all 67 counties. I don't think the Haitians have kind of integrated. We do have Haitian leaders, but this is our first attempt at integrating in the political, in the Democratic Party, in the political arena within the party. So we're excited. The little comments kind of by
Former President Trump
and J.D. Vance is kind of galvanized the Haitian community around voting. And so we're eager to continue that work and to ensure that on the ballot, we ensure that Haitians vote statewide, and not even in the state, across the nation, that we're voting Democratic on down the ballot.
Thank you, Heather. I know this is interesting because what was meant to be evil has actually turned out to be a galvanizing engagement initiative for so many of us, not just Haitian Americans, Caribbeans, but for immigrants across the country, that we're all back into knowing that this is so important. We're just joined by the president of the Caribbean Democratic Caucus, Glenn Joseph. Glenn, welcome back, another guest, returning guest to our program. Glenn, as you know, we're referring to the values of our Caribbean votes, the unity that we share, and just where we are. How is the Caribbean Caucus doing today?
Good morning, everyone. The Caribbean Caucus is doing very well, actually. Excuse me. We have a number of things that we've done and a number of things that we want to do. We have, there are certain problems that we're running into. Uniquely, we have a unique community in South Florida where they like to see visual signs of the campaign. And I keep getting requests for yard signs. And I keep getting complaints that they're driving the streets and they're not seeing any yard signs in any homes, anywhere. Other than that, we're there, we're making calls. We're doing the campaign things that we need to do in order to have a successful turnout on the early voting and on November 5th.
Thank you so much again, Glenn, for what you've been doing. So this call, as I mentioned today, was important that we all came together collectively as leaders within or diaspora within or not just in the state of Florida. But as you know, this is where we are, the voice of Florida, which is uniquely positioned at the southern border of the third border of these United States. And also we have one of the most opposing freedom leaders in the governor of the state. And so a lot of things happening here. We now have Donald Trump, who happens to have taken residence in the state. Many of you know that I started this platform by basically opening this up to have everybody's voice recorded. Everybody on this program, regardless of your party position, you all know at full disclosure what my role is in this party, the Democratic Party. But right now on this call, this is about speaking to our Caribbean communities, not just here in the state of Florida, but as you know, we're on a global platform. We have folks who are in the southern states uniquely affected by Hurricane Helena. that literally touched these battleground states in the South. And so this morning, I wanted us to all come together collectively to also have within this body one of the most advocating House representatives in Congress, our brother, U.S. Congressman Darren Soto, who represents one of the most diverse communities in the state of Florida, with us to have this dialogue, just of how important this is, the Caribbean vote. In my opinion, the Caribbean vote, with almost 15 million, almost 10% of the population, could literally change the electorate of this country in securing the freedoms of this democratic process. Congressman Soto, welcome back. I didn't even tell them what happened with your alarm going off, but thank you for getting back on the call with us.
Just doing a little home maintenance with the alarm guy. So thanks for everybody's patience. You know, it's been a real eye-opener for a lot of folks to see Hurricane Helene and the kind of water it dumped on the Southeast. You have everything from coastal towns where people expect it, and a lot of Caribbean communities throughout Florida being affected by it. But you also have mountain towns like Asheville in North Carolina. Georgia was hard hit, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama. So a lot of areas affected. You are right. Georgia is one of those competitive areas like our home state of Florida. We put aside a lot of that for the time being as we look to President Biden and Vice President Harris for leadership. The Biden-Harris administration just approved the disaster declaration for Florida. I'm sure Georgia and other states are forthcoming, and we have folks on the ground doing the work to get people's power back on. And you know, this one went through the Yucatan Peninsula north, so it didn't hit a lot of the Caribbean other than Cuba and places like Cancun. But we see, you know, we're still in hurricane season, and we can expect potentially other disturbances that'll affect the Eastern Caribbean as well.
Thank you, Congressman Soto. On that point, I move over to our Representative Carol Burke, who was representing the U.S. territories for a very long time, former senator, et cetera. Carol, he touched on one of the important parts that I believe the representative citizens from the U.S. territory, unlike the Caribbean, are U.S. citizens. From the moment you're born, you are a U.S. citizen eligible to vote. And that's one of the things that folks don't seem to realize, that the unique thing, the county, for example, Florida, the mainland, is referred to as the U.S. straight, you know, where we are here. But a lot of U.S. Virgin Islanders call Florida and Georgia home, not only because they come here to study, but there is most students leaving the U.S. Virgin Islands and the territories come to Florida and or to Georgia for study. And also another part is our strong veterans. We have a large veteran community there in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And part of that is that you share even medical services with Puerto Rico. Carol, how do you see your role in the U.S. Virgin Islands in helping to steer this victory as you've done in the past? How do you
Well, yes, thank you. And you know, it was mentioned earlier by the good congressman about you know, having worked alongside our Congress lady Stacey Plaskett, and the fact that a lot of it was, you know, focused on economic development. Well, let me tell you this, having to even contemplate, even visualize, even just to reflect on having to endure a storm, a hurricane every year, kind of sets back, especially during an election cycle, any plan to really push forward with your candidates, whether it's at the top of the ticket, as with Vice President Kamala Harris, or down ballot. And we always think about how we could best help our people. Well, as the congressman was talking, right, I thought about our shared experiences and how we can perhaps bypass a lot of the things that we do by better helping ordinary people, better helping them to cut the recovery time, whether it's by days or weeks. And I thought about the fact that, you know, we really, in this age of technology, we really need to better help folks becoming digitized, with them having saved all their personal belongings, photo shots about everything, so that when these insurance companies come, that they're better prepared to deal with them during their recovery period. And I say that because, you know, you and I had a discussion, Karen, about how do you continue to campaign, and folks are concerned about their personal situation, and having to secure themselves and their family during these difficult times. You know, in North Carolina, we've seen a lot of deaths. Thank God the Virgin Islands, in its preparation and recovery times in the past years, have never experienced that level. Maybe one or two, we lost one or two people, but never what we're seeing now. And my hope is that whether it's the congressman or he and whomever, that we can have a regional, if it's once every 2 years, whatever, but that we meet as shared targets, for the lack of a better word, of these disasters, so that we can look at all the different issues that impact lives, and so that we're better able to address and focus in on that preparedness and that recovery. Listen, the Virgin Islands don't vote. We don't get to vote because I reside in the Virgin Islands. I don't get to vote for the president. But like you said, our feet are to the, we're on the gas. We're having connections and constant communication with our friends and family in Florida, throughout the whole Florida, New York, come all the way down to Georgia. We are doing that. But we would like to see a more holistic, and of course it speaks to the resources that the gentleman spoke about. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, because he was talking about yard sign. But having adequate resources in the time that's allotted to us, to make sure that we reach every single possible voter who is of Caribbean descent. And that should be a goal of ours as well.
Carol, I'm happy you touched on that, because one of the things that folks don't realize is that Caribbean folks are not, we're everywhere. The battleground states, for example, the idea of talking about Pennsylvania, we're all over Pennsylvania. Caribbean Americans are there in Philly. We're all over in Boston. We're all over North Carolina. We have actually, because of our contribution to basically cultural, economical contributions, academia, we have our folks everywhere across this country. And so, Congressman Soto, while you're here in our audience today, we wanted to express to you, because I know if there's nobody else who's an advocate for us as a people and the benefit of our community, is that we need to look 36 days into this election, into this presidential cycle. The resources that needs to be steered towards our community would be probably the most beneficial within this election cycle. Because the truth is, because of what is now, you know, the Republicans are going against with immigration as a number one response, right? We already know that this attack on the Haitian community, being the last of our migrants to this country, because it was done before. Everybody on this call who knows history knows that there was a time in the 30s, it was the Rush, it was the Germans, it was the Irish, it was everybody else. But right now, we have the Haitians, the last of the migrants to this country, who are now the ones that they've chosen to attack. Listen, I want us all to, everyone in our listening audience today, to know the Caribbean community is loyal to our democracy. We are dedicated voters and usually more democratic. Yes, we have conservative values, but we're capitalists, we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, we're educators, and more importantly, we're patriotic voters. We have a Caribbean, Black, Indian woman who happens to be the most educated, and you hear that, right? Just think about it. Women are usually so versed, but think about having a woman who has those three cultural merits: Indian, Caribbean, American, Black woman. You need no other better defender of experience to guide us. Congressman Soto, we're rolling it back to you again, because you know how it is. As I said before, this fellow, a friend, has been there for us.
Sure. So first, Ms. Burke makes a great point about resources. First, hurricanes, then campaigns. I'll address both of them. So one of the big things that's probably going to inevitably have to happen is for us to develop a catastrophe fund to help out with multiple different states and territories when these hurricanes hit. It's been batted around for years. We obviously already have a flood program, flood insurance, and that helps out with many states. But we're seeing even more and more disasters in the Southeast and in the West, and now even in places as far north as the Midwest. And so we're building a coalition. This is something that's going to be essential since climate change is intensifying these storms. We're also addressing the root causes. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is all about decarbonizing, reducing our emissions, whether it's encouraging more folks with EV, with electric vehicles or solar panels, or closing down coal plants and helping with utilities and industry to reduce their emissions. All these things are both addressing the root causes, and it'll take time, as well as we do need to look at a potential catastrophe fund. My colleague Rep Moskowitz from Palm Beach had just proposed that the other day, among others. Now, campaign resources. Our dear sister Kamala has raised a lot of resources. She outraised former President Trump 4-1 in August. Most of that is going to go to these 6 key states, whether it's Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Now you got North Carolina and Florida in the periphery of that. But she's got to win the Electoral College. We all know that. And so one of the biggest things was already mentioned by Ms. Burke and by you, Karen, that our diaspora in these states have to get out to vote. And there are many of us. And we've seen the Caribbean community take on an even more important role than usual, because Kamala's of Jamaican descent, and the former president and his running mate have taken a bullseye to the Haitian community with lies. And it's all about talking about immigration in a nasty way to get people scared and angry and create chaos. And we need to push back with strength, with truth, with love, and a whole lot of work. And so we all have a responsibility not only to get turnout up in our states, but also make sure, like Ms. Burke was mentioning, call all of our family in Philadelphia or in Detroit or in Atlanta or in places here in Florida and North Carolina, among others. There are big Caribbean communities in all those states, and they're going to play a big role. And so that necessarily, because the Electoral College has to be the main focus, but we're hopeful to get resources to every state and territory for democratic efforts up and down the ballot as well.
Gwinnett, you chime in on this point, please.
Absolutely. You guys are talking 2 points that are the benchmark of what we do, actually. Our company is in project management. So Sam and my son Kadeem are both out in Georgia right now as responders in that hurricane debris cleanup process. And guys, the storms are getting stronger and stronger. We're on the front line where we're seeing them. And so, right now we're dealing with the cleanup piece, but after this, we do have to really, really get serious about climate change, because the devastation is astonishing when you actually see it firsthand. Cities actually start over. And so one of the things that we've done in the past, actually, for just the Caribbean region, is we've pulled together the nonprofits just to have a one touch response to be able to rally resources and help and funds when there's a hurricane in the islands. And I think we have to look at that approach even now with respect to getting out the vote. I know that Karen, you mentioned that I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Congressman Soto, when you were running the first time, Maria Padilla and Nancy Rosario came, and they were talking about just how do we get him this out in the community. And we do the Caribbean American Passport, but we white label a lot of stuff. And so we worked and we told them we could actually, because we work with our nonprofits, we could actually work with them to create that newspaper that was done. And so we did Mission Boricua and really delivered it into the community. But it was an example of the Caribbean community, the Puerto Rican community, rallying the larger base that they have, and they tapped into the Hispanic community in a large way. Did a bipartisan effort to raise awareness of all the Hispanic candidates that were running. But make no mistake, our focus was always on, as Caribbean people and Hispanic people and Puerto Rican people, it was on Representative Soto's race. And I feel like we're 36 days out, and we have to do that same model for Kamala Harris.
Let me just say this, because you know how this goes. We need to bring an ad in. We need to pay for this program. So we're going to take a moment right there. You know more than anyone else. We're going to take a quick break and be right back to continue this conversation.
Yes.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Welcome back to The Voice of Florida, where your voice is our choice. We're continuing this discussion today with the value of the Caribbean Democratic voters and the Democratic region, and across the state, actually, across the country, the value of the Caribbean votes as we lead into this Democratic presidential election. We're saying Democratic president because we want to hold it, right? But welcome back. On the subject we were talking about, Gwyneth, the value and the investment of how we reach our people. Mm-hmm. Unlike other communities within our state, the Caribbean community have different means of reaching our audience. Our community, we listen to radio, we read newspapers still, we watch programs, and we're familiar with our popular DJs. We are in our churches, we're in our flea markets, we're at our social events, and this is how we relate to each other. Unlike others, we're not into sensationalism, but we're into talking to each other. And so for us, one of the things that we have always missed, in my capacity, having served as a coalition director for the Caribbean region, is that we know how we talk to each other. And it's usually about your personal experiences, your family's priorities, and just the things that matter to you. But for us, it's unlike other markets. We don't have the time most times to be watching news stations. But while we're moving, we're listening to our local radio networks and our programs. I wanted to spend 1 minute on that for me, Gwyneth, and then I'm going to reach over to Heather just to affirm how we really speak to our community and what we can do at this point to galvanize these votes. 36 days in, what do we do?
So I agree with you. You're absolutely right. We are, I think, coming out of the Caribbean, we do a lot of critical thinking. And so we do not necessarily just trust the news that we receive. We have to get it also validated from our community leaders. And there's trust that goes into the radio programs. The radio programs are very, very significant. And so our community leaders we have to speak to our community. And so that takes resources to get out there. I know that when Val Demings was running, she shared with me that if we got the English-speaking Caribbean vote out, it could turn an election. And so when we gather, as we did with Representative Soto's race, we can leverage the Creole speaking community. We can leverage the Puerto Rican community. We can leverage the English speaking community. And then it is a shoe-in. There are so many people that are just waiting for us to get them activated. You guys know I am a staunch advocate for the Virgin Island community here because I find them in so many places. And I really always try to push them to speak to power. And if we get them to do the same as Mission Boricua did, which was say, when you're on the mainland, this is how you vote. That was the simple message. This is how you vote. Just educating our people that it's a very simple process. We have 2 very strong Caribbean communities there that are citizens that we can push and leverage to be the voice for us.
So you really see this as a messaging maneuver, and to just get it to folks. Heather, tell us where you think what it is we need to do now. I know you're pulling almost a quarter of the state in organization already, but what can we do to help the Haitian community, and what can we do to help get our nominee elected?
I would be remiss. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd be remiss if I don't touch on a couple subjects. When Rep. Soto mentioned the fact about the economic dollars, right? Being a part of this community, seeing all these projects taking place statewide, and the Caribbean community, the Black community being left out, the conversations that are taking place to exclude diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's for a later subject, but I look forward to working with Rep. Soto in addressing some of those issues. But on the federal level, when these dollars are coming down, I think it's very important that the Democratic Party on the federal level starts addressing the issues, because we talk about the airport, the billions of dollars that are circling around, and they're not coming into Black and brown communities, especially Black communities. He also touched on the situation in Haiti. I've got to speak truthfully. Haitian Americans like myself, my daughter, those who were born here, and I mentioned this, Kodak Black is Haitian, right? And all this, everyone's talking about Haiti. We are not pleased of the $300 million that Kenya has, and Kenya's not doing anything. The instability, the guns, the illegal arms trade, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking, the organ trafficking that's taking place in Haiti. And we're to the point right now, even from a caucus perspective, we're going to start voting for Haiti. And now to the issue of media. I've been in this community, I'm raised American, right? I consider myself American Haitian. One of those boat kids, but we had the same conversation with Tom Joyner in the Black community. You remember when the dollars weren't coming into Black media? And so now I think Black media fought, I want to say in the 80s and 90s, fought for an opportunity that wasn't so long ago for the party, the Democratic Party. We're not talking about the Republican Party, but for the Democratic Party's money to come into Black media. And so I think for the Caribbean community now, we have a blueprint to look. The NAACP was engaged in that conversation. So we're not new to this. We don't have to repeat this, but we have to use some of those same tactics to address within our party the lack, because the Haitian community, Caribbean community, we listen to our radio. That's our trusted source. And we've been dedicated, we've been faithful to the party for years, and we've been abiding, but we're to the point right now where we're lethargic. We're tired. We're tired of the campaign promises. And I think that's part of the disengagement for some of the community. And so I look forward to all of us working together, and I'm super excited. I am hopeful, even if we don't have an opportunity right now, because we're 30-something days away. But there's an election every year, and the Caribbean community, we're going to unite. And this has happened to the Black community. We're a part of that Black community as well. And so we know how to fight this, and we know how to fight to win collectively, to make sure that the resources, when they're trickling down, they're also trickling down to our communities.
Thank you, Heather. With only 10 minutes left of this program to go on and the discussion to continue, I'm with you. I'm with you on the fact that we have done the work, we are doing the work, and we'll continue to do the work. And with that said, Glenn, chime in as the Caribbean Caucus chair before we get into a closing round argument.
I was waiting my turn.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to touch on what everyone else has said. All right. Most important is the fact that the distribution of resources is not equitable. We understand that. However, we're 36 days out, 35 days out. Okay. We need to get resources. We need, we know that there are buys going on, but yet still none of the Caribbean programs, whether it be Haitian, Hispanic or otherwise, none of them are getting any calls about radio, about print, about anything. In the Haitian community, there are super voters who are the older folks. They don't do nothing else but listen to the radio. And so we have to stress that Florida is in play. We can take Florida and make Florida the king in this event. We just need the resources to do that. And in the past, we've done it and we will continue to do it. But we can't allow ourselves to be taken advantage of all the time without saying anything about it. And that underscores what everyone else has said.
Thank you, Glenn. I think the congressman expressed to us what is the nature of how distribution in campaign finance goes, given the electorate, right?
I understand that.
Right. And so I'm with you. You and I know that we have an opportunity right now collectively to literally change this trajectory by electing not only Kamala Harris and Walz as president, but we have a Senate race in the state of Florida that we could literally change that at this point because of our own experiences. And so this is why I'm saying a way for us to lead as leaders is to remind folks of how this is done. Heather mentioned something else while she was speaking. In Congressman Darren Soto's district, which is why I refer to him as our guest today, is that he represents a community that has not only an educational familiarity to us, but even the workforce, the hospitality industry within his district, the unions that are there, Unite Here and others. There are so many immigrants who are working in Osceola, in Disney, on the coast there within that district, in agriculture and in hospitality. And he's familiar with that. He knows our plea and he knows how we contribute. So bringing him on today was really to engage with us on a familiar space, to educate us, and to also be our voice in advocacy, because he's always done that. We can trust him. We trust him in every way, and we continue to uplift him as one of us. Congressman Soto, can you just chime in with a minute before I move into closing, please?
Sure. So first, let's talk about locally. Now, I could speak for Central Florida, not South Florida. I know some of you are from South Florida, and that is a little outside of my region. But in Central Florida, we now have a majority union represented airport. We particularly have Black Caribbean leaders in Unite Here and SEIU at the airport in many of the leadership positions. We also, through the direction of the Biden-Harris administration, signed a memorandum of understanding for the Justice 40 initiative, which is to have 40% of all contracts be from communities of color. I do know there are several Caribbean contractors that are doing work at the airport, but it is by no means a majority. And there needs to be some improvement in the Black Caribbean community getting some of those contracts as well. We also know that a lot of these roads that are being built right now actually will directly help both the entire Caribbean community. Point Siena, as an example, has a huge Black Caribbean community of both Haitian, Jamaican, Virgin Islands, among others, including a large Puerto Rican community there. That $1.3 billion road is literally to help folks who are living in Point Siena and driving to Disney. And so we know a lot of folks have been waiting a long time for that. And as far as Haiti, look, well, so much more needs to be done. It's a real sad situation down there. We do see a caretaker government finally come in as we're working towards getting elections there. But you can tell that Vice President Harris's influence is rising. After 2 years, we finally saw the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, go to Haiti, something that should have happened 2 years ago. But you could tell now she's helping lead the charge on a lot of this. We need to do more to help make sure they build out their voter rolls, to make sure that they improve security there and get the economic development dollars that are flowing to most of the rest of the Caribbean right now, something that, as was mentioned before, I worked directly with Stacey Plaskett on. Literally, that was our initiative to segment out over $200 million each year for economic development and security for the Caribbean. Before that, it was just a general fund that never had any committed dollars to. So we do have much more work to do in Haiti, but we see our vice president finally really getting more of the focus there. As far as ad dollars, obviously I'll be spending on both Spanish language, Creole, and English radio. Most of that money, though, is going to flow to Caribbean radio stations in the swing states like Georgia. I would love to be a Caribbean radio station owner in Philadelphia right now. I'm sure they are going to do just fine. Florida, we have more work to do to show that we are a true swing state. We're not getting, and we probably won't get nearly the type of money we got 4 years ago, unfortunately. And that will affect a lot of different media outlets. But I assure you, in some of these closer states, they're going to be firing on all cylinders, and you should see more of that. And so a better gauge is talk to your friends in Atlanta and Philly about what dollars are flowing in, because those are the most competitive states, and most of the money is going to go to those 6 states as far as the presidential race is going. That doesn't put anybody off the hook, but we got to win a race here, and we got to win an electoral college.
Congressman Soto, thank you for that point. But I also wanted to express to our listening and viewing audience that this network that you're watching at this moment reaches all of that market. Every single person on this network will, every state, every community, as we said before, we're trusted. People listen to the folks that they value and they trust. And this is what we want to emphasize. Getting all of you on this call today was important to me. Let me just take this moment to thank you each individually for being on this program, that The Voice of Florida, where your voice is your choice. But today, before, I usually do a wrap up on each program. I want to take this opportunity. On this program today, we had 3 of Kamala Harris's delegates who voted to have her as the nominee. Carl Burke, Heather Josephs, and myself. We nominated Congresswoman or Vice President to be, and of course, our brother Darren Soto. But let me just say this, that this is because we see the advantage for us, and we are committed to helping to make her the next for the 47th president. Remember, folks, in the state of Florida, the last day to register to vote is on October 7th. October 7th, visit iwillvote.com. Make sure you have that done today. And again, welcome guests. Again, this is the program where your voice is your choice. Continue to support this programming. And again, we look forward to having you all again on the show. Congressman Soto, we wish to see you continuously representing us in the House of Congress as we move through. And Carol, continue to hold up the United U.S. territories. God bless you all. And again, thank you for viewing and joining us here on the show. Your voice is your choice. See you next week. God bless.
The Voice of Florida. Your voice is our choice, with Dr. Karen Green.
Wow, c'est choix nous. Tu voz es nuestra elección. Ta voix.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, rtv.network.